if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, then you're watching it after it was recorded and it's not live. However, here we are. I'm pretty stoked to have my guest with me today. Before I get to that, do want to talk about the sponsor. It is Freedom Grooming, and Freedom Grooming is how I shave my head every day. If you know the story, during the pandemic, my hair got long, and I was bald on top. So no matter what I did, it looked like a comb over. Just so I shaved it, and I was happy with it, even though my wife wasn't all that happy with it. And then I decided I wanted to look better, so I bought probably 7 different shavers, from electric to manual, and then I finally found Freedom Grooming, and it just works. I shave in the shower, I shave in the car if I'm running out of time, and it just works. So go to freedomgrooming.com/influencer. No, forward slash, it'll be in the show notes. Anyway, just go to Freedom Grooming and use the word Behind the Bits podcast, all one word, and you will get 10% off your first order. So if you're bald like me, Freedom Grooming works and it's great. So my guest today is, I got to tell you a little story before I bring him out. So I listen to comedy albums as my job pretty much. And um, if you're a comedian, you know that you listen to these comedy albums and you kind of know what's coming. And it's just, you don't laugh. You understand what's funny, but you don't laugh at everything because you're not an audience member. So that's pretty much how I listen to comedy albums. So I listened to this one, and I was driving to Birmingham, and I laughed like a little girl. It was just like it was the funniest thing I'd heard in years. And so I immediately emailed this gentleman, and fortunately, he agreed to do the podcast with me. Who I've got with me today is Glen Foster. You may know him as that Canadian guy, and he's been performing comedy for over 40 years, and it really shows on this album. I'm going to bring him out right now. It's Glen Foster, that Canadian guy. Glen, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Great. And I don't want to pump up your ego too much, but
You are pumping up my ego something awful already.
yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I recognize with comedy, studying it the way I do, is um, it, you either like it or you don't, as far as a comedian is concerned. But as somebody who studies it, you have to appreciate the work and the timing and the pauses and everything that you put into that album. I mean, I think anybody could listen to it and maybe not love your style, but completely agree that you put together one of the best comedy albums that I have heard, and one of the best comedy albums that I think's been put out this century.
Holy
It's
shit.
really,
Okay.
I mean, it's really, it's. I was, from the beginning to the end, I was just marveling at how good it was, and I listened to it driving to Birmingham, and they're about 2 hours away from me, and I listened to it again on the way back, and I've listened to it twice since then, just to find out what went into making it the way it was. And that's really kind of what I want to talk about today, because you've been doing this for 40 years, and I listened to some of your other bits, on YouTube and stuff like that. And when I compare stuff that you did like in 2010 or 2014 to the album, I know you've grown since then, and you'd been doing it for 30 years at that point. So I know that it's something that you continue to try to be better at. But what I want to get to is, you know, I'm going to go right for the album. It's called Unchecked, and you can find it on a lot of sources. I listen to it on Amazon Music because I don't like to give Spotify any of my time, because I don't because
It's
they're hucksters.
actually suspended from Spotify right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
because there's some kind of dispute going on with Spoken Giants, which is the
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they're connected with 800-Pound Gorilla, which is the label that this went out on, right?
Yeah.
This is the first album, by the way. This is my 4th album, and it's the only one that's ever had any American play. Like,
Really?
because
Uh-huh.
I've never had a US record company. I've done everything independently, right?
Yeah.
So it turned out that Daryl Lennox, a friend of mine, is connected with 800-Pound, and he put me onto them, and that's how that happened. But it's the first of any kind of serious exposure I've ever had in the US.
And really, I started listening to the JFL channel on Sirius XM because there's a difference, and I don't know what it is. I'm hoping you can help me today. There's a difference between Canadian comics and American comics, and I know it's subtle, but for some reason, I laugh at the JFL channel more than I do the like Raw Dog or any of the other ones. For some reason, it just hits me different, and that's where one of the tracks from Unchecked was on there, and that's why I said, oh, I got to listen to this album because this track just totally it was one of the OCD tracks, and
Oh, okay.
it just totally blew me away, and um that's why I listened to the full album. But there's a subtle difference between American humor and Canadian humor. Have you put a finger on it?
I think there's a fair bit of attitude, right?
Uh-huh.
In that, and I'm not saying all American comics, but a lot of American comics come from more of a performance background, I think,
Mhm.
and they tend to sell.
Yeah.
American comics sell the bit way more
Mhm.
than Canadian comics, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, and also, we're pretty focused on the writing up here. I think,
Yeah.
not exclusively,
Mhm.
but if you say someone's a strong comic up here, you're more likely talking about the writing than the performance. You
Yeah.
know, Whereas in the States, it's all about, I got to perform this bit so someone will see me, put me in a sitcom or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, not to be rude, I'll be a little rude, but I see a lot of American comics with absolutely nothing, and they're selling it huge,
Yeah.
and it irks the shit out of me.
Yeah. Well, and you see that on a
And I'm
lot
not
of
saying
the
all American comics, because there are a lot of very clever writing American
right,
comics as well.
right, and you see
But
that a lot on the some of the Netflix and Amazon specials that I watch. I'm like, You're not as funny as the person I saw in South Bend, Indiana 3 years ago, and that person's just a regular old road comic, and
oh yeah,
and and working on the writing. A lot of the ones that are really doing the road comic thing are still trying to find out who they are, so they're really working on the writing versus selling a something that'll do well on a TikTok. So
right, exactly,
it's
exactly.
it's it's totally different, and maybe that's why I'm attracted to it, because I'm really um I'm really enamored by good writing. However, on this particular album, I think you leaned into the performance part more than you probably ever have. Not necessarily act outs or anything like that, but you have some very well placed pauses, some very well placed stammering, and just it. You know, as somebody who listens to it a lot, that you worked hard on it, but as an audience, it felt very organic and genuine, and the first time that you ever said it. So I I know what goes behind that, but I can tell that you put. I just want to know what kind of work went into that album, because I know that some of those.
When I started out, I was the only one who would pay me to write for them.
Uh,
And I started as a writer, right?
yeah.
I wrote comedy. I mean, 1,000 years ago, I had an ad job. I was a copywriter.
Uh,
I could have been uh, uh, who was the guy uh, John Hamm, right?
yeah. The Mad Men.
What's
Yeah.
the show? Mad Men. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of the show Mad Men, right? So I said I could have been a Don Draper, minus the chicks and the booze.
Uh,
Had I stuck with it, but there just came a point where I was doing comedy and still had my ad job. And I just realized that if I were to stick with my advertising job, I would have to get up and go to work every day.
Uh-huh.
And that just didn't really appeal to me. Of course, it was the
totally
comedy
dig
boom.
that
It was the
because I've
original
been
comedy
doing it.
boom, early 80s anyway, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
uh-huh.
it was a huge thing then. It was, getting into something new and exciting, and yeah. But to your point, it takes, I always tell people, and I think this is common knowledge, the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours type thing.
Mhm.
It takes 10 years. It takes 10 years to get good at this.
Mhm.
And then another 10 to figure out you're doing it all wrong. And I mean, I'm constantly, trying to grow, I guess, as you say, and change things up and so on and so forth. It took me 20 years to take the mic out of the stand.
Uh-huh.
I used to stand behind the mic dead straight, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the performance for me has taken a long time, and I still don't feel completely comfortable with performance.
Uh-huh.
I'm always happy with the writing end of it. Performance, not my strong suit. I still say not my strong suit.
Yeah.
You know.
So thinking about the tracks on this album, and I know some of them are ones that you've worked on for years, and some of them are newer, and it's a mix of that.
Everything on this album is with a few exceptions, probably no more than 5 years old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of the one that might be a little bit anyway.
There's triple meaning to unchecked as well, right?
Yeah.
Because unchecked, if you look at the cover, right?
Yeah.
I've got all those things, boxes that I don't check.
Uh-huh.
Rich, good looking. Then I've got some thrown in there like LGBTQ or Aboriginal or
Uh-huh.
boxes I don't check.
Yeah.
Unchecked is also, if you listen to the album, talking about my my ADD and my minor OCD and check boxes and lists and all that. And then the third meaning is unchecked,
Yeah.
like not censored type thing.
Right.
Although there's only one F-bomb on the entire
Yeah.
album,
Right.
right? But it had to be an F-bomb. It had to be. There's no other word
Yeah.
that would work there, right?
Right.
So I never get in
that's
trouble.
really
I never get in trouble for language, but I do run into trouble on content.
Mhm.
People are like, "Oh, you can't do a joke about this, or you can't do a joke." Like it makes it hard to book corporate when they're like, "Well, we don't want anything, that's might be considered sexist, or might be a little bit racist, or we don't want this and we don't want that." And I'm like, "Well, you don't want me, it seems."
Yeah. Right.
But I mean, I can play both sides of the fence, right? I mean, I can do a cruise ship clean show if I have to.
Mhm.
I just don't enjoy that. I
Right.
enjoy provoking and taking shots and so on and so forth. Not
And-
offending people. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I sure want them to think that I might.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly, you ride that edge so well. And
Well, tell club owners.
yeah, nothing I hear from you comes out as mean. It comes out as, I'm trying to understand how other people think.
Yeah, that's a good description, I think. I'm not a mean person,
Yeah.
I'm not,
And I feel like you fall into, one of my absolute favorites is Tom Dreesen. And one of the things that he always says to comedians who are asking about comedy that's maybe on the edge, that could potentially offend somebody, and the only thing he asks is it funny?
right.
Because if it's funny, you can
Shouldn't matter.
normally get away with it.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
if it's not, then they're gonna nitpick everything you said.
Right. And that's what that one joke is about,
Mhm.
right? The
Yep.
fact that comedy is subjective,
Yeah.
right? It's funny to you. It might not be funny to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's funny to you.
Yeah.
You might be a sick fuck,
Yeah.
but it's funny to you.
And I tried to remove myself because I do I kind of empathize with you because I've got a little bit of the ADD myself. I don't have the OCD because I don't care what I forget.
It's
but
it's
but
so like it's just trace elements of both of these things, right?
yeah.
I mean, you my room is a shambles, everything, my website is a
Yeah.
shambles, everything is a shambles, and yet there is so much order in the
Yeah.
shambles,
Yeah.
right? There's little pockets of order everywhere. My act is the most organized thing in my entire life, and it's kind of random at times
Uh-huh.
too, you know?
Yeah. How did you get to the point, one of the things that you mentioned when I was showering all the praise on you about the album is that you put a lot of work into it, and that you were pretty proud of it yourself. So what did you do to get this album to the point where it is?
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of callbacks and that sort of thing
Mhm.
that I tend to use. So what did I do? Um, well, I certainly went out and worked on the individual bits,
Mhm.
and b the order structure of the whole thing,
Mhm.
right? And as I say, I put a few years into it. I mean, it was, as I say, probably the third or fourth attempt at recording, but my first attempt was maybe 4 years before that.
Mhm.
So it only got better, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm a bit obsessive. I record every set
Mhm.
that I do, and some of them I never even look at, right? But a lot of them, when I'm working on something, I'll definitely look at it. And I like to call myself a joke mechanic, you know.
Mhm.
I will take it apart. I will say, can this, be a better word, a different word, even jokes that work. I'll still mess around with them
Mhm.
to see if, they can work better, type thing. But a big part of my act is structure. And are you familiar with the rock band Triumph?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I like to think that I learned a few things from watching Triumph.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And a few of those things would be open big, you know,
Uh-huh.
massive
Yeah.
explosions,
Yeah.
whatever. Right. And then there's what I would call tricks. Right. So, can you do an impression? Okay, great. But the minute you do an impression, people know you can do an impression. That's not a surprise anymore,
Yeah.
right? Can you do a vocal accent, a sound effect, whatever little tricks that you bring along? The minute you use them, they're done. They're not done, but people know it's not a surprise. I like to surprise people. I like to use a lot of misdirection, and
Mhm.
I like surprises. I like surprising people. So, uh, okay, so Triumph, I always thought, they made the most use of all their tricks, their pyro, everything else.
Mhm.
I saw Genesis at one point, and they just threw their stuff away.
Mhm.
It was like, when the roadies aren't busy, we let them play with the smoke machines. And they turned on the smoke machines. Well, you don't have a song going right now. There's no
Yeah.
effect. You're just that's gone now. You can't, right? So that's why I say things like impressions, vocal effects, whatever you would do, if you haven't done it to a point, people don't know you can, and
Mhm.
it's a surprise. But the minute, so if you do an impression early in your show, they're like, okay, he does impressions.
Yeah.
Now where's another one? Or,
Uh-huh.
I mean, these are things that I think subconsciously I put a lot of faith, I think, in the subconscious as well. Like I don't like to use the same word twice in a bit.
Okay.
And it's to me just a thing that here's an example of a joke that I was doing, and it's just a stupid joke, and it was a kind of a throwaway. But I would stand on stage and I would turn profile and I would say, check this out, right? So round across the front, but flat across the back, right? So I would say, so somewhat aerodynamic, right? But people weren't getting it. right? Now, why weren't they getting it? Because you don't think of aerodynamics in a vertical plane. You think of it in a horizontal plane, right? So by adding, I changed it. I said, so when I lie down, actually somewhat aerodynamic. And it started working better because I'm conveying that, see, mentally, you're not accepting this,
Right.
but you will accept this.
Yeah, you're painting a picture of
Right.
a subconscious picture. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, as I say, I'm big on what is the mind hearing that you're not hearing as you listen to something and you hear it one way, but your mind is hearing it a different way, kind of thing.
Right. So
If
how
I'm
do you
making any
become
sense at all.
Yeah, how do you become aware of that though?
I just always have been, I think.
Mhm.
Maybe to do with advertising or
Yeah.
whatever, just communication. I've always been in some kind of communication field. I mean, that's what this is. This is communication.
Right.
If I have an idea in my head that I think is funny, for you to think it's funny, I have to communicate the idea.
Mhm.
If I'm not getting a laugh on a joke, there's two possibilities. One, it's not funny,
Mhm.
right? But it's me, so let's discount that. The other possibility is, I was just joking there. The other possibility is
I like it.
I'm not communicating the bit clearly,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm communicating the bit clearly and it's still not funny, it's not funny,
Uh-huh.
right? But I could be miscommunicating the bit, right? Which
Mhm.
happens, right? So I try to, I don't know if you'll notice I'm a lot better at writing things down than actually conveying them in a conversation.
So how long does it how many times will you perform a particular bit before you decide, okay,
Oh,
I need
actually,
to put this away?
I have a rule. This is my rule. I will try a joke once or twice, and if it still doesn't get a laugh, I will only try it 3 or 400 more times. If I think a joke is funny, I'll keep trying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I have a
And
I
that's
had a stupid joke that I was doing, and it doesn't get a laugh, and it should get a laugh, but it doesn't get a laugh. So I've just been making fun of the fact that I've done it so many times, and it hasn't gotten a laugh.
uh-huh.
And the joke is, well, the lead in is, I'm what is known as a late bloomer. I hope. And I say, seriously, it has taken me a very, very long time to figure out that I am a slow learner. It doesn't get much, right? And
Yeah.
then I'll say, case in point, that is about the 95th time I have told that joke, and it never gets a laugh. And yet I persist.
The phonetics of late bloomer is like the perfect, because I use it too. It's like the perfect thing to say that just sounds funny.
Yeah, it's a curse
It's
from my mother, actually.
yeah.
Years ago, when I was first starting comedy, she said to me, she said, "Well, you know, Rodney Dangerfield didn't become famous until he was in his 50s." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, Mom." 30 years ago, that's what I wanted to hear. And now I'm like, yeah, maybe in his 60s. Yeah, maybe, you know, there's still time.
Yeah. Now it's obvious that you do comedy. First of all, it's personal, but like you said, you want to do
Actually,
what you
actually,
think is
very
funny.
little. This album is the most personal album I've ever done
Oh yeah.
because most of my comedy is just observational.
Yeah.
You know, this is the first album that I've ever really put a fair chunk of the personal in.
Uh-huh. So do you
The
feel like
making
that
lists and the dog and the
yeah.
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 I wish I had more personal stuff, really, because I think it makes a better connection with the audience. I wish I had more stories, for example,
Right.
but I don't. So, I'm jokes. I write
Yeah.
jokes. It's what I do.
And that's what really connected with me was the personal stuff, especially, when you're talking about I didn't get anything done today. Got up at 11. That type of stuff really stuck with me, and I guess it's because I identify with it. And it's the same thing. You got so much on your plate, you're just not going to do anything. So,
That's exactly it. That's
yeah,
exactly. If I could turn my camera around right now, you could just see there's notes all over my walls. There's shit all over my desk. There's boxes. I mean, we've been in this house 3 years now, and I have barely even unpacked shit that's still put away. I've got 2 laptops on my desk and a computer and another computer. I could just acquire shit, you
yeah,
know. I, yeah, I won't necessarily say that I'm a hoarder, but I'm a pack rat for sure. I've got all kinds of, and some of it might even be, have some value. I mean, I've got, my old record collection, and I've got shit from the 80s,
yeah.
technology from the 80s. I've got a Palm Pilot.
There you go.
I've got a Walkman Sport, right? And I've got all this stuff, and it's sitting. I've moved it 3 times. For what's the point of that? I don't know. Because you think, oh, I might need this someday. Might need that. Thousands of plugs and cords and everything else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I finally we moved from Indiana to Huntsville, Alabama just last year, and we knew we were going to go, so we pared everything down, and then when we got down here, we got into a condo without a garage because that's all we could get, and I had to pare down again.
I was going to say,
and it's nice. It's nice to know that I'm not missing anything, but it was
right.
really hard to throw the stuff away.
It is. I find it so hard to throw anything away, like anything. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing. It's a disease. There's a mental block. I've still got my Lego from when I was 7 years old. And by the way, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. When I was 7 years old, I figured out how to make a Lego gun that actually fired a Lego brick.
Ooh.
So at some point, I'm going to do that again and videotape it and put that on the internet.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe you'll be a TikTok star.
Yeah, maybe. Right. That sounds like a typical TikTok thing. I have one TikTok that did 70,000 views. And out of that, and that's the only one that's ever done anything. Right. It was a complete fluke in a way, because it was during when lockdown first started, when all the lockdowns. So my wife was touring Europe at the time, and the day before France shut down, she flew out of France. And on the night of her last night in Paris, they were stayed at a hotel at the airport, 300-room hotel with like 30 guests in it on the last night. So I had to go pick her up at the airport when she's flying out of Europe, with COVID chasing her up the runway.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay. So what I did was I put a shower curtain in the car, like across the back seat.
Yeah.
So that was my TikTok, just me going to pick up my wife with a shower curtain in the back. Right? And unfortunately, she was much too tired and cranky to she thought it was amusing, but she didn't want to be on camera. It was like, she hates being on camera at the best of times. Like, she just hates it. She does not want to be the center of attention ever. But can you imagine the number of hits I would have got had she actually responded to or reacted to this stupid shower curtain on camera, right? But no. But anyway.
So do you think that this shift with more personal material, do you think that's what's connected with the U.S. audiences, or have you been able to put a finger on it?
I don't know, because I don't even tour in the U.S. I do everything in Canada, which is stupid, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more, market in the States and everything else. So I really don't have a good read on how my stuff does in the U.S. Right? Other than, I guess, satellite traffic or whatever, from. Right. I mean, there's you guys get things in the States like Pandora that we can't even get here.
Yeah.
My album's on Pandora. I can't even listen to it here.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. That's it.
So until I start getting some feedback from the States,
Mhm.
I really don't know. I mean, I
Okay.
can't see how it would be all that different because I mean,
Yeah.
I've done shows on ships and everything else, and some stuff is universal and
Right.
some stuff isn't, right? But yeah, I'm, again,
Yeah.
no hard data on that.
Yeah. Well, I gave you my feedback. I'm just one guy, but
Right. Well, we need thousands more like you, my friend.
yeah, I
That's for
know
sure.
it struck a chord, and I am, I'm telling everybody I can about it because I think, and I just I don't want to beat this to the ground, but I think as far as putting together something that is a cohesive unit from front to back and the joke structure and the performance element, like I said, it's one of the best albums I've heard, and not just by everybody. I'm just talking, it's just, or just
Well, the things.
recently. I'm talking about, I'm comparing it to my George Carlin albums and my Bill
Oh,
Cosby albums and all
Jesus.
that
No,
stuff that I
that
love.
is high praise. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I actually met George Carlin for about 45 seconds once before he was
Cool.
going on stage, and one of my prized possessions is a letter from George Carlin.
Oh,
'Cause,
nice.
when I put out my first album, I sent him a copy, right? And I sent a note and I said, "I have all your albums. I think you should have one of mine."
Uh-huh.
Right? And he actually called, and I was out of the house, right?
Uh-huh.
But he left a message on my answering machine, which is lost to history because, tapes die and
Uh-huh.
get recorded over, right? Like I should have
Yeah.
pulled it, right? But I didn't, not thinking, whatever. But he said, "Hey, Glenn, thanks for sending your album. I hope you don't mind. Me and the boys made some copies and we're selling them down by the pier." I thought that was great. That was great.
Oh man. You know
Yeah.
what's funny is I just watched a clip of Carlin on the Jimmy Dean show. So this is the old button up Carlin, just fresh out of radio, and he's writing for Jimmy Dean, and Jimmy Dean brings him out, and he does his news bit, but he does the hippy dippy weatherman. But the way he does it is, I'm the hippy dippy weatherman with all the hippy dippy weather. He doesn't say man at the end of it. So this isn't it's not a
Ah,
fully fledged bit.
right.
And
Oh, so
yeah,
he's
he
just
did it.
working on it.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
really neat to see that because
Yeah.
it was black and white, and it's probably years before he put that album out. But to know that, like you, he keeps honing in on it and keeps finding the funny, and by adding one word to it, he made that bit 10 times more funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I watched that through a couple times because, and it was funny because my wife wanted to go to sleep, and I just kept watching.
Isn't it amazing all the old stuff you can find on YouTube and
Oh
everything? It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
incredible stuff.
yeah.
That's
And I just marveled the fact that, and she's like, what's up with that? I said, because he didn't say man.
right. Yeah.
you know
Yeah, yeah.
and on the album he says man, and it's way more funny, and it was just, it's interesting to me to see how some that shows growth in a comedian, that they're self-aware and that they're always working on the bit. That bit could have been 10 years old when he put it
Oh,
on
for
the
sure.
album,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he made it to the point where it can't possibly be any more funny because he said man. And
Yeah.
I marvel at that, and that's what I see in your album. I can tell that you have done this so many times that you've got
Here's the thing. So structure wise, every joke has a structure,
Mhm,
and then the show has a structure. So the jokes have structure within the show,
mhm.
and then the show itself has you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's kind of macro and micro, I
yeah,
guess, at the
yeah, for
same time.
sure.
But yeah, I'm constantly, like a joke will come into my head, and I'm pretty lucky that for the most part, it pops into my head the way I'm going to do it, and for the most part, it hits. You
Mhm,
know, I mean, that just comes with time, I guess.
mhm.
Uh, but if it doesn't hit right away, then you got to tinker with it. You got to play with it and say, what exactly, because I know this is funny,
Mhm.
right? Or at least I think so. I have a good idea that it's funny.
Mhm.
How do I convey it, right? And how do I not give it away as I'm conveying it?
Right.
I think
Right.
that's part of the challenge too, because when I watch comedy, I see everything coming,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I'm see, I'm the same.
even
Yeah.
with people who are trying to fool me, like Anthony Jeselnik does a lot
Uh-huh.
of
Yeah.
misdirection. So then you start looking for the misdirection,
Yeah.
right? Which means that your whole act can't be misdirection, right? You have
Yeah.
to make them forget that you can do misdirection,
Yeah.
right? But yeah,
And
there's a lot of misdirection in my act for sure.
yeah. And it's also very subtle, some of the misdirection. I mean, some of it, some of those, especially, at the beginning, the one of the first bits is the planning.
Oh yeah.
Of, you know, that stuff sat with me, and I was laughing at it like 2 tracks later. It was like, "Oh, this is funny," and then some stuff sunk in, and I was laughing again at it, and and you didn't need a callback for me to remember it. It just stuck with me, and I thought that was really good.
Well, there's a lot of jokes that okay, now I've completely lost my train of thought here. I was going to say, oh yeah, the planning bit that you're talking about, that took a lot of planning.
Yeah.
I had to, rewrite and reconstruct that bit so many times,
Uh-huh.
because if you do one part of it in the wrong place, it screws you for the rest of it, because you
Yeah.
have to keep the certain parts of it sort of secret, but kind of hint and allude to it, and then hit them with the punchline down the road that I got
Yeah.
up at 11,
Yeah.
right? When I
Uh-huh.
talked about how there's not enough hours in the day, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Now it's noon, but I got up at 11, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing, obviously, I'm just not doing it well. I'm not even doing my own bit well
Yeah.
here.
Well, and that's really one of the things I admired about that joke in the album is it's a long road with a lot of
A
tags in it.
lot of tags and twists and so on and so forth. And that joke probably took 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
going up on stage and changing and fixing and adjusting and so on and so forth, so that it was just the right combination of uh, chaos with an order to it,
Uh-huh.
right? Because it's about chaos, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
As I
Yeah,
say,
and
my whole life is chaos except for these little chunks of order.
yeah. And I gotta think that you would make the people who are totally organized with their life, that they were just squirming in their seats
Oh,
when
I bet. I bet. And the number of times too, people come up after the show, "Oh, my husband is just like you. He can't
Yeah.
organize his life to,
Yeah.
he's or my brother, or this guy's I always say I'm the weakest link in my own organization,
Yeah.
which is true. I'd be
Yeah.
so much further ahead if anyone but me was in charge of me,
Yeah.
right?
Totally get it. Hey, and in keeping with that, you sent me a bit that's a little bit newer, and that you're still working out. Do you want to listen to that real quick and talk
Which
about
one?
it?
Yeah, it depends. I sent you two, so it depends which one we're
This is going to
talking
be
about.
the shorter one.
A
It
shorter one.
starts out
Okay,
with
yeah, sure. Yeah,
the God. Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
let's play it real quick.
My wife recently accused me of having a God complex. And I was like, honey, how could you say that unto me? The Catholic Church is taking a lot of heat these days for all the sexual abuse. And I don't think it's fair to tarnish the whole organization when really, if we're totally honest, it's mostly just the men.
So that's a brand new bit.
Yeah.
That Catholic bit is a brand new bit. The other bit, the God complex, that I've been doing for a couple of years now. That joke just popped into my head,
Uh-huh.
just and I just went out and did it as is, and it works, and it's
Yeah.
fine. The Catholic one I just came up with the other day because I've been watching a lot of comedy. I'm always watching a lot of comedy. And it just, there's so many jokes these days, and not just jokes, but just in the general, public sphere about, abuse in the Catholic Church and everything else. And the concept of, hey, it's mostly just the men.
Yeah.
That popped into my head fairly instantly. It's the conveying of it, right? So you notice that I say Catholic Church first. I don't say it again. I say organization. Right? So I'm trying to avoid using the same words.
Yeah.
And the joke got a bit of a laugh, but I think it could get, and my friends, we're all puzzled. We've been looking at this joke and we're puzzled, like, why didn't that get a bigger pop? Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I got too much setup in there and I need to trim it down. But it was the first time it's falling out of my face.
Yeah.
So, you need to do that. You need whatever joke you're working on, it's got to fall out of your face for the first time somewhere. And that was like it was a club set, I think. Yeah. And then once you hear it and once it's out, then you can start tinkering with it and say, okay, there's too much setup here. There's too much. And I'm still trying, because it is a bit of a misdirection joke, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm talking about this whole organization and
right.
leading you away from, the fact that it's just the men.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out, why it didn't land.
Yeah.
Better. I mean, for me, that would be like a showstopper type of,
again, I
you have
think
to stop for the applause break.
Too much setup. I think there's too much. I made it too complicated. I've been thinking about it, and I think the next time I go out, it'll be something like, the Catholic Church has taken a lot of heat, and now everyone is suspect. From right on up to the Pope, right? And I don't think that's fair because it's mostly just the men.
Yeah.
Right. So I've cut the joke in half effectively. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So that might help. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it could also be that show was in Ottawa. Ottawa has this unique situation where it's the capital of Canada, of course, and there are a lot of public servants, and public servants don't want to be seen laughing at something that doesn't fit the manual.
Yeah.
I even do a joke about it. It's like, someone will see you laughing and then they'll take out their phone and then the next morning it's a call from HR. Yeah. Did you have a good time? Well, now you're fired. Huh? What do you think of that? You laughed at a joke and now you're fired.
Do you think maybe it's because it's right on the, right after the God complex one?
Well, I did the God complex one just so I'm in the religion sphere.
Yeah.
Right? Just so it's not coming out of nowhere, because I wanted to have something, because I'm trying a new joke. I want that new joke to have, one of two things. I either want it to have like a nice, comfortable, first time out, or I like to do a new joke right off the top, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the best read you'll ever get.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You do it right off the top with nothing to support it, and just.
Yeah. And I just felt like the God complex one took some active listening, and it was a little bit, it can be a little bit more delayed because the thou part has to sink in.
Yes. Unto.
Yeah.
How could you say that? Unto. Unto is the key word there.
Yeah. So that has to sink in, and I don't know if their brains are still working to synthesize that into the laugh, and so it made the other one a little bit harder for them to get back into. I don't know, but I thought it was a perfect setup and premise, and the punch is just fantastic. So I know that's going to work for you somehow, but it's kind of neat to see this. I'm glad you sent it, because it's kind of neat to see a work in progress, and then someday I'm going to get to see it when it's all polished up and ready to go.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
Funnier when it lands better. When it lands better. I mean, we believe it to be funny. We just have to make it land better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you say that you watch and listen to a lot of comedy like I do, and as
I still enjoy watching comedy. I still go out to open mics. I still go, if I go to a show, I watch the whole show.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I still enjoy watching. I almost enjoy watching comedy as much as I do performing comedy.
Yeah.
Even like 40 something years into the game,
Yeah.
even bad comedy can be funny.
Oh yeah.
like
Yeah.
in its own bad way, right?
Yeah.
I also find, and I've told this to a lot of people too, that even if you go to like the shittiest open mic where there's like, 2 audience members and 10 comics, and it's like you're entertaining those 10 comics and the 2, even the shittiest open mic puts you in a creative framework,
It
right?
does. Yeah.
I came up with that Catholic joke. If I hadn't gone out to that open mic the other night, I wouldn't have come up with that joke,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so really that's what you're hearing there is the second time I did that joke,
Uh-huh.
because I came up with it at the open mic.
Yeah.
I did it at the open mic, then I did it in an actual club,
Yeah.
right? But what I'm saying is there's been a number of times that I could recall where I'll be driving home from whatever show, open mic nonsense, and
Mhm.
something will just pop in my head that has nothing to do with the jokes I
Mhm.
saw that night or anything. It's just being in a creative environment, right?
Yeah.
Even a terrible creative environment
Yeah.
is still a creative environment.
Yeah. And just knowing, for me, just knowing that I'm going to go to one puts the whole day into a more creative space for me, because I feel like I have to bring something new and original, even though
Yes.
open mics aren't about that. And I know that I write a lot more when I know that I've got even a shitty open mic, like you said,
Right.
even when I've got that coming. And part of it's because you want to impress the other comedians.
Yes.
You want them to like you, and when you're of a certain age, you've got that hurdle to go through too, because they're all in their 20s, and you have to win them over that way. But yeah, I agree that when if I know that I'm going to do something as stupid as an open mic, that I know there's going to be 10 comics and 2 people sitting there, it puts me in a different frame of mind than if I say, okay, I got to write something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's very hard to sit down and write something,
Yeah.
I find. I mean, I've done it. I've had to do it in the past, and I've done it.
Hmm.
But it's hard. My best ideas, I have no idea where they
Yeah.
came from,
Yeah.
right? They just pop into my head, and
Yeah.
people go, "How do you come up with your ideas?" Well, I wish I knew,
Yeah.
because I'd come up with more of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So when you get those popping into your head, what do you do to first of all remember it, and how do you record it so that it doesn't fly away?
I usually will write it down. I still I always have a pen on me,
Hmm.
actually. Do I have it now? Let's find out. Yes, I do. I have the Seinfeld space pen.
Oh, you can write upside down.
I can write upside down, I can write underwater. It's a great little pen because, well, first of all, it's self-contained, right? So it's not gonna
Yeah.
blow up in your pocket or anything like
Uh-huh.
that. It's very small. I put it in the key pocket of my jeans usually,
Yeah.
right? So I always have a pen, and I usually have a notepad somewhere, or I'll scrawl it down or whatever, but,
Mhm.
I'm pretty good at remembering things, that I just came up with. It's stuff
Mhm.
that I've been doing for years that I forget.
Yeah.
I
And
think,
your
oh,
stuff
sorry,
has
go ahead.
evolved.
It has, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, and continues to evolve, I
Yeah.
think, you know? Um, I think the best example of a misdirection joke on the album is the not watching the news.
Yeah.
I stopped watching the news.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Y- Yeah, that's
and
that one.
there's an interesting thing, because if I do that joke, I have to do it before I talk about anything in the news,
Uh-huh.
or it doesn't. That's what I'm talking about, the subconscious,
Yeah.
right? So it's like if you do a joke about my girlfriend, right?
Mhm.
And then a couple minutes later, you're doing a joke about your wife.
Yeah.
In the back of their mind, people will go, "Well, didn't he just say he had a girlfriend?" What?
Yeah.
And it's not something that you really pay attention to, but
Uh-huh.
I think the mind subconsciously does pay
Yeah.
attention to stuff like that, right? And
Yeah.
it causes an unnecessary little bump in the road,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
it's like a riff.
I
Yeah.
try to smooth out all those little bumps that people don't even think about.
Uh-huh. Now, do you have, like a close enough circle of friends that you bounce this stuff off of people in the business, and they
Not
help you
terribly
hone it up a little
often.
bit?
Well, no, I don't say I'll bounce stuff off of them, but
Mm,
we give each other tags and stuff like that,
yeah.
right? I
Hmm.
have pretty close circle that way, but also, you know, I'm older than most of the people I'm working with now, so it's
Right.
not that I have a close circle of peers because my peers have gone on to bigger and better things. You know, I know a lot of famous people.
Yeah. And that, I don't know, I know you from this album, and I know that we're Facebook friends, and I never know exactly how that happens because I forget who I asked a friend, and I forget who
Oh,
asked me
yeah.
to friend, and I see that you're just you're a regular guy that does comedy. You're not like super weird like a lot of comedians that I know,
Oh, I'm
and,
pretty weird. I just keep
yeah,
it under
you're
wraps.
not weird on the outside because I'm weird on
No,
the inside too.
no, yeah.
Yeah, and but you're a guy that I wouldn't be scared of if I ran into you at Walmart. So I don't know if do you have Walmarts in Canada?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
We do,
so
yeah.
I wouldn't be scared of you.
But
Some of the comedians.
we don't have Walmarts with open carry, though.
Yeah, okay. But some of the comedians I know, if I didn't know them and I ran into them at Walmart, I'd probably change aisles. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a little bit different situation. So, and that's how I don't know if it's your age or the way you carry yourself. You seem to be able to some of the more stuff that could be considered controversial is it lands better with you than I think somebody that is, say they're 30, and they look like a hipster or something like that. It seems like it's going to land better because I don't know, you've built this, and you don't get the other thing on the album is you don't get into the more controversial stuff until about halfway through.
That's on
And
purpose.
yeah,
That's
and
absolutely on purpose, right?
because you've drawn them in as just somebody who's kind of bumbling through life because you can't get up before 11, blah blah blah, and then you when you get into it, it just seems to be a natural progression versus something that you're bringing up and you want to call out of attention to the fact that you're being controversial.
Yeah. Yeah. But I like it's like the first job in this game is make them like you,
Yeah.
right? So you don't want them to dislike you
Hmm.
on your way to trying to do something controversial. Like it's really hard. I find it really hard to do anything dark or controversial in a short set
Yeah.
because you have not got time
Hmm.
for them to like you first before you say something
Hmm.
horrible.
Yeah.
Right? And what's even harder is if you're up first,
Yeah.
right? Because the audience, they've just had an MC do 15 minutes of hi, how are you, where you're from, happy, we're all glad to be here, and then boom, into the dark material. You can't do
Yeah.
it. Very difficult,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I always, if you're on a little later in the show, and here's another thing, I did an all dark show called This Ain't the CBC.
Hmm.
Uh, our CBC is our national broadcaster up here, and very straight laced,
Hmm.
and so anything remotely controversial they wouldn't touch.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's harder almost to do that kind of show than to just slip a dark joke in here once a while in a regular show,
Hmm.
because again, the element of surprise,
Yeah.
right? Like if it's like you slip a dark joke in, I go, ooh, right? You've got that kind of shock value a little bit,
Yeah.
element of surprise. But when you're going to what is a dark show, you think, well, maybe I'm not dark enough,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
or consistently dark enough, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So
Right.
it's a kind of a two-edged sword when you brand that way,
Yeah.
right?
And I
Um,
feel the same is true with clean comedy. And I see all these clean shows and these people that bill themselves as a clean comic. Well, so what? Are you funny? I I
It is harder to
I
be funny clean, though. It is.
yeah, and I do,
Yeah.
my set is, almost 90% clean. Very, very similar to yours as far as subject matter,
Right. That's like I say,
and I don't
no
swear a
one's no
lot.
one's
Yeah.
gonna throw me out for swearing, but they'll
Yeah.
go, I don't think you should be doing that religious joke," or,
Yeah.
you know, maybe
Yeah.
is a little too political, or maybe
Yeah.
that's, LGTP people, I might not like that joke, or,
Yeah. Right.
whatever, right? I'm gonna target somebody,
Yeah.
and again, and then there are other people, from all these different groups who love those jokes, right?
Hmm.
So it's all very subjective, and it's
Yeah.
all, kind of squeaky wheel when it comes to all this, PC wokeness and everything else. It's
Yeah.
not everybody that's complaining,
No.
but it is, the vocal people who are complaining are driving the bus, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's also what I always try to do. I mean, I I can't get offended very easily. However, I can listen to something and say, that's not congruent with the way I think, or I know that this could potentially be hurtful to somebody. But if you don't know where it's coming from, you you don't have the right to say that it's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I come from a family that, I had a lot of gay men in my life because my grandmother was friends with them. And so I feel like I could talk about that, but I don't, because I know that I just look like regular straight dude that never even talked to a gay person, even though I worked with them and they were in my life. And yet, if I did, they wouldn't know where it's coming from. You know
Right.
the and it's
You feel it's not your purview.
yeah, and yet it
You
kind of
have no
is
you
because
have
I
no right
lived
to
it.
talk about that because you're not gay. You can't talk about being black because you're not black.
Yeah, right.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, you notice, I there's some on the album, about being a white male type thing.
Right. Can I get a
Uh,
brown person? I love that.
and then and then there's other stuff that I've been doing now that is, as you say, walking that fine line, and it could blow up in my face anytime, right? Like and that's the
Oh
thrill
yeah.
for me. That's the thrill for
Oh
me, right?
yeah.
That,
Yeah.
I could, you know, this could all go to hell.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what really made this album hit with me so much, because you the first part is just masterful, and the misdirects, and you know being personal and all that. And then when you got into the stuff that's a little bit more controversial, you did it in a way that I don't somebody could obviously complain about it, but they don't have much meat on the bone, because you're coming at it from your own perspective, and it's very evident that you're just trying to understand, not
It's
not
also
trying
very, very,
to.
very, apologetic.
Yeah, you're not
I'm
punching
going and
down.
saying
Yeah.
sorry in advance almost, right? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
way, but this is how I think, and this is, my thoughts on the matter type thing. And
Yeah,
people
for
still do
sure.
get offended, but, what can you do about that, right?
Yeah. So
I'm kind of
since you're
surprised
watching.
actually that there's a couple tracks on this album that I shot. I thought for sure they'd pick up on Raw Dog.
Uh-huh.
uh, the rape
Yeah.
abortion bit, I thought for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Yeah.
Especially because of the recent decision, the Roe v.
Yeah.
Wade
Yeah.
overturning and everything else, right? But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Maybe they will. Maybe I'll
'Cause
write
It's
them
not
a
gonna it's
little
not gonna
letter.
get played anywhere else,
Yeah.
right?
So in watching all the comedy that you've watched, and I'm glad you're a fan of it too, because some people I've talked to some people who just don't watch comedy, and they're
Oh,
comedians,
there's
and it's
guys who come
weird.
in, they do their show, they leave.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
watch anything up to the show. They don't watch
Yeah.
anything up till their spot. They don't watch anything after their spot, right?
Uh-huh.
I think you
Yeah.
at least have to watch before your spot, because
Yeah.
how do you know what's going on? The things
Yeah,
could
no
have
doubt.
happened in the
Yeah.
show, like,
Mhm. Yeah,
there's
your
a lot of
joke could have been
headliners
told.
who there's a lot of headliners who just sit in a room in the green room,
Yeah.
don't go out at all till they're on,
Yeah.
right? I watch the whole damn show because
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on in the room,
Right.
you know?
So based on what you are seeing that's going on, what advice would you give to most of the new comedians that you see?
Oh boy. Well, going back to the story thing, I think storytelling is very popular these days, and I always tell comedians that anything that they have that's based in truth or a true story about them, anything that's theirs, you know,
Mm,
like anyone could do my jokes, pretty much. Not anyone, but anyone with any
yeah.
degree of skill could do my jokes,
Mm,
right? The best jokes, I think, are jokes that are so personal that other people could do them, but why? Right? That,
mhm,
that they have, you know what I mean? So I always tell new comics that anything you have that's personal to you and funny, of course, right,
mhm,
is gold, right? Because
mhm.
who can duplicate that?
Yeah.
You know, anyone can take your jokes, but they can't take you. And if you are an integral part of your jokes, then that's a unique thing,
Mhm.
you know?
That's that that really
There's
strikes
okay, so
true.
here's another thing that I was, you know, there's at a point at a point in this business, everybody's funny,
Mhm.
right? At a point, everybody's funny. Okay, you're funny. So what? Right?
Yeah.
What else? What else have you got in addition to being funny? What makes your funny different? What makes
Mhm.
your funny more memorable? What makes your, you know, connect with the audience better type thing? Because everybody's funny, right?
Mhm. That that's so true, and that's it's kind of a juxtaposition because the I'm listening to JFL almost all the time, and they are, like you said, they're very heavy into the writing versus the performing, and I'm wondering why I am drawn to that more than I am somebody that's, loud and proud and does a lot of act outs and stuff like that. I just
Well, the other thing is loud and proud and act outs don't work very well in audio. And if you're listening
yeah.
primarily listening, not
Mhm.
watching comedy, the jokes are going to stand out
Right.
because one thing people always say about me is like, say, and it happens occasionally, I get recognized, doesn't happen very often. Used to happen more because there was a point in the early 2000s where just about everything I'd ever done up to that point was being rerun on the
Mhm.
new comedy network.
Mhm.
And people still say this to me. They'll say, "You know, I saw you and I thought it was you, and I wasn't sure until I heard your voice because
Yeah.
they, you know, that I have a very distinct voice."
Yeah.
And I think that's something else that helps me carry, you know, the
Yeah.
bits type
Yeah.
thing is that I do have a distinct voice. It's a voice that cuts through, you
Right.
know. I can take a room if I have to,
Yeah.
right? If people are
Yeah.
chitting, chatting, whatever, I can
Yeah.
overpower them.
The other thing is it's a perfect pitch for me because I wear hearing aids, and then there's certain frequencies I don't hear. I hear you. So that
Well,
helps.
I'm with you on that. I'm in complete hearing denial right now. And
Yeah.
you know, when your parents say turn that down, you'll go deaf.
Yep.
They're right.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
I used to
Yeah. My
DJ in high school. I used to have a pair of headphones on,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
know, you're listening to the music in your headphones louder than it's playing in the room, so that
You
you can
got it.
queue up the next whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I hear conversations wrong all the time now,
Yep.
all the
Yep.
time. And
Yep.
the funny thing about that, I've been meaning to do a bit about it, is how you never question it.
Yeah.
Like you hear it wrong, it's so completely wrong. It couldn't like, how did you get it so wrong? And yet you think, yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah. Well, and I'm working on a bit about hearing aids being a racket too, because they're not all they're cracked up to be. So that's gonna be another bit because you still hear it wrong. You just hear it
Yeah,
more clearly wrong.
right. Clearly wrong and louder, probably. And they squeal too if you pull them out or something, don't they?
Yeah,
They still
yeah.
do that? I
Yeah,
didn't know
oh
if that
yeah,
was
and
an
then you can
old-fashioned
hear
hearing
the
aid thing.
you can hear the people in the restaurant behind you more than you can hear the person in front of you. So
Right.
that's still a thing, and yet all the technology is supposed to be so much better. Well, Glenn, I got to tell you, it's great to talk to you, and I'll just keep saying it. That album is one of the best albums I've heard.
Well,
And
say that as many places as you can.
I will. So if people want to find you, where can they find you besides that canadianguy.com?
That's pretty much it. Actually, if you
Okay.
go there, there's links to everything else. At least there should be. I don't know. I designed my own website, so it's probably in a state of shambles, like everything
Yeah.
else right now. But yeah, I mean, if you just look up That Canadian Guy, you'll find stuff on YouTube. All the links are on the website. As I say, the album has been suspended from Spotify, so any other, I mean, I suppose you could buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If anyone buys anything anymore, I don't know.
Yeah. I
Um,
I actually do. So
oh,
if
okay.
I listen to it, I always buy it just because I
But
know.
I was going to say that some of the clips on the album I have video for on the website. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there's stuff there, and yeah, I guess it's I'm pretty easy to find. I'm a pretty findable guy on the
Yeah.
internet. I
Yeah.
was one of the first comedians actually to even have a website.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Cool.
this is a kind of a true but sad story. I used to run an open mic. I don't know if you ever heard of Jeff Healy. He
I
was a
love Jeff Healy.
Okay, yeah, guitar player, right? Well, he had a bar in Toronto, and I used to run an open mic at his bar on
Uh-huh.
Monday nights. So it would be like comedy first and then music afterwards, right?
Uh-huh.
And at the time, we were talking about the early 2000s into maybe 2000. Anyway, YouTube was just coming along,
Uh-huh.
right? And some of these younger guys were saying, "Oh, you got to put your stuff on YouTube," you know? And
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know. Who's paying for this? Who's paying for the bandwidth? And I was all like negative Nelly about the whole thing. And then Dane Cook becomes a huge star and Russell Peters
Yeah.
becomes a huge star. And then,
Yeah.
these guys, they had their board in the water
Yeah.
when the wave was coming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I saw the wave and I'm like, nah, I don't know if I want to get who's paying for this? It could be a scam. Yeah. So, I was I really, I was an early adopter with technology. I was on the internet and I just, dropped the ball as I do occasionally.
Uh-huh.
When you're ADD,
Yeah.
a lot of balls get dropped. So, yeah.
For sure. Yeah, we're gonna have to get together and just talk music and stuff because you mentioned two of my favorite bands, Triumph and Jeff
Oh,
Healy. So
all right then. Both
for some reason,
Canadian.
I lean Canadian and everything. And
Oh, you must be a huge Rush fan then.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
big time. And I saw Jeff Healy in Bingo Parlor in Indiana,
Holy.
probably, I don't know, 25 years ago. And he just tore the place up. It was just fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was amazing to watch.
I still listen
The
to his stuff. I mean, nobody can play guitar like him because the way he did it.
way
I
he
mean,
played
it
it, yeah.
just,
Well,
yeah,
that's a great story
it's,
in itself, and that no one told him he had to pick it up, so he put it on his
yeah,
lap,
yeah, yeah,
and that's how he learned to play, right?
yeah,
'Cause
yeah. So
he didn't know he was blind, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
there was no, nobody can repeat those riffs because the way he did it. There's
exactly.
just no comparison. Well, I'm gonna let you go, but like I said, everybody check out thatcanadianguy.com and go wherever you can to listen to Unchecked. If you're a comedian, you need to listen to it because it's like a comedy book in an album. I mean, you can listen to it a few times and then understand how a joke's supposed to be told. So
Well,
I really,
that
really
is
loved it.
I can't thank you enough, man. It is high praise, and I really appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well, thanks a lot, Glenn. Let's get off live real quick.